Having children entails a number of different things. One thing we love to do as parents is encourage them to find their passion. And that can be through taking up a hobby, playing sports, or getting involved in the arts. Whatever your child decides to try and maybe pursue comes with a price because you need to pay for them and participate. And when you're going through a divorce, you should be putting these things on your priority list when you are figuring out the financials. Donna LaScala is the president of Comprehensive Divorce Solutions. She is trained to work with clients in divorce planning, mediation, collaborative dispute resolution, and she is also a financial advocate. Her goal is to create a lifestyle that is fair for everyone involved in a divorce. Donna, welcome.
Thank you so much, Ilyssa, for having me on the Divorce Hour. It's truly a pleasure.
Well, it's always a pleasure having you. When you're helping clients understand the dollars and cents when it comes to a divorce, we want some of that money to be used and allocated for our kids' sports, after school activities, maybe a group participation event. So how do you guide parents to making sure that proper funds are set aside for the children?
So it's a very complicated situation when you're going through a divorce to keep in mind that your children are expecting, become used to a certain lifestyle, and it's a huge disruption for them if you get to a point where you have to turn around and say, well, I can no longer afford to give you dance lessons or cheerleading or soccer or lacrosse or whatever it is that your child has become involved with. And I usually try to get the parents to start with the basics and the reality, and then realize why the standard does not cover a lot of these things. So let's just start talking about some dollars and cents. In the state of New York, we have an income cap on the factoring of things like child support and other benefits that are being given to the spouse. So the cap is $154,000. That was set as of March of 2020. So $154,000 is the combined parental income factor that is used to then calculate things like child support. When it comes to this calculation, there are certain things that are set in stone. It's 17% of combined parental income for one child. It can go as high as 35% if you have up to 5 children or more. Now let's start to break that down and talk about what that means. $154,000 of joint parental income, 17% for one child is $26,180 a year. For 3 children, which is kind of the norm of what a lot of people have, it's 29% of that number. That's $44,660 a year. That equates to $14,900 per child. Now let's talk about what it actually costs to raise a child. And we're still talking about basics. The calculation right now is the projected family on a middle income. A child born in 2015, it will cost $233,610 to raise that child. Inflation calculated, it's up to $284,000, up to the age of 18. Now, what does that cover? It covers the basics: food, shelter, clothing, medical, and education supply costs, not education. So if you start talking about things like dance class, music lessons, soccer, college tuition, none of that is covered. So here's where it starts to get complicated when you're talking about a divorce, because those are the things that are not factored in to the calculation from the very get-go, and it takes people by surprise.
Wow. And just those numbers sound so high and so crazy. I want to go back to something you said that people may not understand, and they are going to hear when they're going through a divorce. Income cap. For people who are learning about this for the first time, what is it, and what happens when it becomes the topic of conversation during mediation and the collaborative process?
So when you're dealing with a litigated divorce, things seem to be a lot more specific, cut and dry, black and white, but they're really not, because as we've spoken about in the past, so many litigated divorces, about 95% of all of them wind up settling out of court anyway. But when you're in a mediation or a collaborative setting, everything is negotiable. And where we start is with the basic bottom line. So if we're talking about the income cap, what they're saying is that the first $154,000 of joint parental income is used for the basic calculation. If there is a lifestyle expectation, and that's where, as a CDFA, I would do a lifestyle analysis of the family. What's been going on in reality? Where do you live? What's your mortgage? What's your food cost? What's your clothing cost? What are you actually spending on a monthly basis, on an annual basis? Because there is a huge difference based on where you live. Even with this $233,000, it depends on where you live. At $233,000, that's kind of like the basic of a rural area. You talk about the Northeast, it's already $264,000. Now inflate that, it's over $300,000. So you need to know where these people are and what they've been doing for their children, what's been involved, because now you're going to have two households. So the housing cost alone, they're only calculating that 29% of the annual number is spent on housing. So if you're talking about one child at $26,180 of combined parental income, 29% for housing, that's only about $3,900 a year. These are annual numbers. So in a mediation, in a collaboration, we start to talk about the individual reality of that family. What's your house worth? What is your mortgage? What have you been spending? What are the kids expecting? What do you want to do for your family so that you come out of this as whole as possible? Is there more income that can be used to continue to provide the lifestyle that these children are used to, so that their life is not as disrupted by the divorce as it would be if everything was very cut and dry based on the cap? The reason for the cap is so that people don't go crazy in their calculations of what's expected. And that's really where you start to get into the nuance of why a mediation or a collaboration. It's not what I'm expecting. It's not what I'm entitled to. It's not what I'm supposed to get. It's the reality of my family. What does my family actually spend? What does my family actually receive as income? How do we make it work? And the thing is that no matter what setting you're in, you have to make it make sense in the document that is sent to the court. And everything that is done above the cap, outside of the basic calculation, has to be explained and has to be validated in such a way that the court says, yes, absolutely, this makes perfect sense for this family. Because remember, it's a legal document at the end of the day that's going to be produced.
You know, you and I have talked about before the importance of planning and preparing. So having said that, is it helpful for clients to come in with a list? And I want to stick to the kid thing here for all the things that kids are involved with. And I'm not just talking about participating in soccer or football, lacrosse, or, tennis, but there's equipment that's involved. There's gear. There could be uniforms, special clothing, special shoes like cleats. Does it help you to help your clients to have all of this ahead of time so you know how to help clients not really have to change too much for these kids?
Absolutely. And that really is the key. So forget, all those lists that we have and all those forms that we have. And, there's forms up the yin-yang on websites and the New York State website. You can pull off any form relative to divorce. But I usually say to my clients, can we please throw those lists out for a minute? Because that formula, that list that you got, it's so broad, it's not really helpful. So let's talk about you. Let's talk about your family. Nancy, Bill, Jack, and Jill, whoever it is, let's talk about your family, and I break it down by child. What is this child involved with? What are they doing? How much does it cost for that particular child? And things like, does your child have a food allergy? Does your child require a specific type of diet? Because we all know once you go off the basics of what a child is supposedly eating at their age, if you've got any kind of dietary specialty going on, it's a lot more expensive than it is for the basic food. And remember, where you start is with the basics. Basic food, basic shelter, basic clothing. We're not talking about enhanced anything. So again, I tell them, give me a list. Let's talk about each child, what they're doing, what it's costing in real numbers for each child in this family. And now we can back into what needs to happen as far as this calculation is considered.
I want to go back. When I was introing you, I talked about your incredible background in divorce planning, mediation, collaborative dispute resolution, and being a financial advocate. Having said all that and wearing so many hats, how do you bring all that to the table to help alleviate the unwanted stress when two people are trying to find some sort of resolution they can both live with? Do you have any tips and suggestions that people can jot down and maybe apply to their own situation?
Well, honestly, the first thing I tell them to do, and I know this might sound crazy, the first thing I tell them to do is stop talking to everybody. Because everybody's got an opinion, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a fact, and it also doesn't necessarily mean that it applies to you in your situation. Too much information sometimes from outside sources is the worst thing that can happen. So I say to them, look, I know everybody means well, but your friend in the gym telling you that her sister went through a horrible divorce 5 years ago has absolutely nothing to do with you. So let's just focus on you. Tell me what your vision is for your family going forward. Tell me what you want your children to experience through this process. Tell me what's keeping you up at night. I make it as personal as I possibly can so that they focus on their own reality. And that really is what's helpful. But also being realistic and actually providing me or whoever they're working with real information. Because it's the pie-in-the-sky kind of thinking that gets people off track of what's really going to wind up happening. And I try to keep them focused on, we're working in the best interest of the family, we're working in the best interest of your children. You want to be as whole as possible coming out of this so that you can continue to co-parent, so that you can continue to have some semblance of family and normal. So refocusing them, getting them back to the reality of the situation and to stop listening to all the ambient noise that goes on when you go through a divorce, because it's not helpful.
No, but you are helpful. And for people who want to continue this conversation and listen to a lot more of you, how do they get in touch with you?
Well, my phone number is 516-218-6919, and my website is www.donnaelascala.com.
Stick around. We'll be right back.
At Comprehensive Divorce Solutions, Donna LaScala provides the tools for people to deal with assets, debts, equitable distribution, and retirement in divorce negotiations. We hold your hand during and after the divorce process, providing a roadmap of what happens next and into the future. Divorce is difficult whether you're initiating it or not. It's fraught with emotion. When you deal with emotions, you are not dealing with logic, making it more difficult to decide what to do with your money. Hiring a professional to assist you in walking down the money path is crucial to avoiding potentially costly mistakes. Donna's goal is to make sure that each individual knows how they are going to be able to survive and thrive during and after divorce. As a CDFA-trained mediator and collaborative financial neutral, Donna helps people get unstuck and move forward towards their post-divorce future. Call Donna LaScala at 516-218-6919, 516-218-6919.